The outpost was alive with activity, a chaotic symphony of alien voices and human chatter echoing through the bustling streets. The former ruins of Earth's largest cities had been transformed into hubs of interstellar commerce. Streets once filled with human vehicles now hosted towering aliens alongside scrappy traders and weathered diplomats. Alex Carter darted through the crowded thoroughfare, weaving past a vendor selling glowing trinkets and a towering reptilian alien haggling loudly. The smells of spices, machinery oil, and something distinctly alien wafted through the air. Clutching a tray loaded with warm food, Alex ignored the curious glances from passing aliens and focused on their destination, the family diner nestled between two massive trading depots. The diner was small but inviting, its windows glowing softly under neon lights spelling out Carter's Eats, a taste of Earth. Inside, the space was cramped but cheerful. Human patrons shared tables with alien traders, and the air hummed with quiet conversation. At the counter, Alex's mom, Maria, wiped down a coffee machine, her expression lined with exhaustion but softened by a faint smile. "You're late," Maria said without looking up as Alex entered, the tray wobbling precariously in their hands. "Blame the crowds," Alex replied, setting the tray on the counter. "It's packed out there." Maria's smile faded. "It's always like this before something bad happens. The rumors about the fleets are scaring people." Alex nodded. Everyone had heard the whispers. The Crater Dominion and the Tharn Coalition, two of the galaxy's most powerful militaries, were on the verge of war. Earth, sitting inconveniently between their territories, had become a hot spot for political tension. The outpost, officially designated neutral ground, was starting to feel like a tinderbox. The chime above the door jingled, and Alex turned to see a group of Crater Marines ducking through the entrance. The room fell silent. They were massive, their towering forms barely fitting through the human-sized doorway. Clad in dark armor that gleamed under the diner's lights, their presence was enough to send a wave of unease rippling through the patrons. The largest of the group, a grizzled figure with scars running across his scaled face, surveyed the room with a sharp, predatory gaze. Maria stiffened behind the counter, her hand tightening on the cloth she'd been using. "Alex," she murmured, "don't." Too late. Alex had already grabbed a menu and approached the newcomers. "Welcome to Carter's Eats," they said brightly, looking up at the towering figures without a hint of fear. "Grab a seat wherever you like." The lead Marine tilted his head, his deep-set eyes narrowing. "This is a human establishment," he rumbled, his voice low and gravelly. "Yup," Alex said, still smiling. "But everyone's welcome. You hungry?" The Marine exchanged glances with his comrades, their expressions unreadable. After a moment, he shrugged and gestured toward a corner booth. The group squeezed into the too small space, their armor creaking against the diner's worn seats. Maria shot Alex a warning look as they returned to the counter. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "Being polite," Alex replied, grabbing a notepad. "They're just customers." "They're Crater Marines, Alex. They don't exactly have a reputation for just anything." Alex shrugged. "They're still hungry." The Marines sat in silence as Alex approached with their notepad. "What can I get you?" they asked, ignoring the awkward stares from the other patrons. The lead Marine studied them for a moment before leaning forward. "Human food," he said simply. "Something filling." "Got it. I'll bring out a mix." Back at the counter, Maria muttered under her breath as she prepared the order. "I hope you know what you're doing." "I'm just serving food," Alex replied. When the plates arrived, the Marines stared at the dishes, their expressions skeptical. Alex placed a bowl of steaming stew in front of the lead Marine, along with a plate of bread and roasted vegetables. "It's not fancy, but it'll keep you going," Alex said. The Marine sniffed the air and hesitated. Then, with a cautious motion, he picked up a piece of bread and tore off a chunk. The other Marines followed suit, sampling the food in silence. Minutes passed, and the tension in the room eased as the Marines began to eat in earnest. The lead Marine finished his stew and leaned back, his expression unreadable. "This is acceptable," he said. Alex grinned. "High praise. Glad you like it." The Marine's eyes narrowed. You're an unusual human. How so? Most of your kind avoid us. They stare, they whisper. But you… He gestured to the empty bowl. You serve food without hesitation. Why? Alex shrugged. You looked hungry. And I figure if you're here, you're not fighting anyone, right? So why not make you feel welcome? For a moment, the Marine said nothing. Then, to Alex's surprise, he let out a low, rumbling laugh. It was a strange sound, like gravel shifting, but it carried a genuine warmth. You are bold, he said. And foolish. But perhaps not as weak as I thought. Alex tilted their head. Thanks? I think. The Marine chuckled again and stood, his comrades following suit. He reached into a pouch at his side and pulled out a small, metallic emblem. He placed it on the table. A token, he said. For your courage. Few would treat us as you have. Remember this, little human, kindness is rare in the galaxy. Cherish it. With that, the Marines departed, leaving the diner buzzing with nervous chatter. Alex stared at the emblem, its surface etched with alien symbols. Maria approached, her arms crossed. You have a knack for finding trouble, you know that? Alex looked up, their expression serious. I wasn't trying to find trouble. I just wanted them to feel like they belong. Maria sighed and ruffled Alex's hair. You've got a good heart, kid. Just be careful where you put it. That night, as Alex lay in bed, they couldn't shake the Marine's words. Kindness is rare in the galaxy. It wasn't a comforting thought. Unbeknownst to Alex, the Marine's report had already reached the Crater Command. By morning, the entire outpost would be caught in the middle of a standoff between two alien fleets. And the kindness of one 12-year-old would prove to be the most valuable weapon humanity had. The morning air crackled with unease. News had spread faster than the sun had risen. Two alien fleets had entered orbit above Earth, their ships casting long, menacing shadows across the outpost. The Crater Dominion and the Tharn Coalition were on the verge of open conflict, and the neutral zone around Earth was now the centerpiece of their brewing war. Alex Carter stood on the rooftop of the diner, their heart racing as they stared at the sky. High above, the sleek, angular silhouettes of crater warships floated in formation, their dark hulls gleaming faintly in the sunlight. Opposite them, the Tharn fleet loomed, their ships bulkier and covered in glowing, shifting patterns. From this distance, it was impossible to miss the sheer power both sides wielded. Alex, get down from there! Maria's voice cut through the tension, sharp and worried. Alex sighed and climbed back through the window into their room. Maria was waiting, her arms crossed and her brow furrowed. What are you doing up there? She demanded. Do you have any idea how dangerous this is? They could start firing at any moment. I just wanted to see what's going on, Alex replied, trying to sound calm. It's not every day you get two alien fleets in orbit. Maria shook her head. This isn't something to be curious about. It's a powder keg, Alex, and we're standing on it. By midday, the tension had reached a boiling point. The outpost's central square was packed with people, humans and aliens alike, gathered to watch as representatives from both factions prepared to meet face to face. Alex, despite Maria's protests, had joined the crowd, weaving their way to the front for a better view. At the center of the square stood two delegations. On one side, the Crater Envoy, a tall, imposing figure with gleaming scales and piercing amber eyes. On the other, the Tharn emissary, a wiry, serpentine being whose translucent skin shimmered with shifting colors. Between them was a human diplomat, sweating visibly under the weight of responsibility. The Crater Envoy spoke first, his voice a low, guttural rumble. This sector belongs to the Dominion. Your presence here is a violation of our treaty. The Tharn emissary hissed, their tone mocking. Your treaties are meaningless. This territory is unclaimed, and your insistence on dominance is pathetic. The human diplomat raised a hand, his voice trembling. Please, both of you, this is neutral ground. Earth has no stake in your conflict. There's no need for violence. The Crater Envoy sneered. Neutral ground? The Tharn presence here is a declaration of war. The Tharn emissary leaned closer, their tone dripping with disdain. Perhaps it is time for war. The crowd gasped as the tension escalated. Alex, standing at the edge of the square, felt a sinking weight in their chest. This wasn't a simple disagreement, it was the prelude to something far worse. As the two delegations continued their heated exchange, Alex noticed a familiar figure standing near the crater envoy. It was the lead Marine from the diner, his scarred face as unreadable as ever. He caught Alex's eye and tilted his head slightly, a silent acknowledgement. Without thinking, Alex stepped forward, weaving through the crowd until they were standing at the edge of the circle. The human diplomat noticed them and frowned, clearly alarmed. "Kid, you shouldn't be here." But before he could say more, the crater Marine raised a hand. "Let them speak." The square fell silent, all eyes turning to Alex. They hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of so many stares, but then they squared their shoulders and stepped into the center. "I don't understand why you're fighting over this," Alex began, their voice steady despite the tension. "Earth isn't trying to pick sides. We just want to live in peace. Why does it have to be a battleground?" The Tharn emissary scoffed. "The innocence of children. They do not understand the complexities of war." The crater Marine, however, looked intrigued. "And yet this child speaks truth. What does Earth gain from becoming a pawn in our conflict?" Alex turned to him, encouraged. "Exactly. We're not your enemies. If anything, we should be working together to avoid war, not starting it." The crater envoy frowned, his expression conflicted. "Child, you speak boldly for someone so young. Do you truly believe peace is possible?" Alex nodded. "I do. But only if you're willing to try." The conversation might have ended there if not for what happened next. A loud hum filled the air, and the crowd turned to see a Tharn dropship descending into the square. Its engines kicked up dust and debris as it landed, and the doors hissed open to reveal a squad of armed soldiers. The crater envoy snarled, stepping forward. "What is the meaning of this? Are you so eager to escalate?" The Tharn emissary raised a hand. "Stand down. This is merely a precaution." The tension in the square was palpable, the standoff teetering on the edge of violence. Alex felt a pang of fear, but they refused to back down. "Stop!" they shouted, their voice ringing out above the commotion. "What's the point of all this? You're going to destroy everything just to prove who's stronger?" The crater Marine stepped forward, placing a hand on Alex's shoulder. "The child has a point," he said, his voice carrying across the square. "Perhaps we should listen." The Tharn emissary looked skeptical, but the Marine's words seemed to carry weight. Slowly, the soldiers lowered their weapons, and the crowd began to relax. By the end of the day, the standoff hadn't ended, but it had been defused, for now. Both fleets remained in orbit, their weapons primed, but no shots had been fired. In the square, the tension lingered like a heavy fog, but there was a sense that, perhaps, things might not spiral out of control. Alex returned to the diner that evening, exhausted but hopeful. Maria was waiting for them, her arms crossed but her expression soft. "You scared me today," she said quietly. "I had to try," Alex replied. Maria sighed, pulling them into a hug. "You're too brave for your own good, you know that?" Alex smiled. "Maybe. But it worked, didn't it?" As they sat down for dinner, the crater Marine's words echoed in Alex's mind, "Kindness is rare in the galaxy." They didn't know what the next day would bring, but for now, they clung to the hope that kindness could still make a difference. The morning sky above Earth remained crowded with the looming silhouettes of the crater and Tharn fleets, their silent presence a menacing reminder of how close the outpost had come to destruction. The fragile calm achieved the day before felt tenuous, like a thread ready to snap under the weight of a single wrong word. Alex Carter sat at the diner's counter, staring at the alien emblem the crater Marine had left behind. The intricate, unfamiliar patterns shimmered faintly in the light, seeming almost alive. It was hard to imagine how something so small could represent the weight of an empire. Maria set a plate of toast and eggs in front of Alex, her expression a mix of worry and exhaustion. "You've got that look again," she said. "What look?" The one you get when you're about to do something reckless. Alex managed a faint smile but didn't respond. Their mind was already racing. They had seen firsthand how close the standoff had come to boiling over. Both fleets were armed, tense, and ready to strike. And yet either had made the first move. That hesitation felt like an opportunity, a sliver of hope that peace might still be possible. I have to try, Alex said finally, pushing the plate aside. Maria sighed, her hand tightening around the dishcloth she held. Alex, you've done enough. You stood in front of 2 alien delegations yesterday. That's more bravery than anyone could ask for. Let the diplomats handle the rest. They're not listening to each other, Alex replied. They're too busy trying to prove who's stronger. But maybe they'll listen to me. Maria stared at them for a long moment before shaking her head. You're stubborn. Just like your father. Alex smiled softly. He always said stubbornness was a strength. Maria placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. Be careful, okay? I will. Alex's plan wasn't complicated, but it was risky. Using the emblem as a token of trust, they would board the Crider flagship and speak directly to the leaders of both factions. It was a long shot, but Alex believed in the power of sincerity. The Crider Marine who had visited the diner was stationed near the outpost's central square, his imposing figure instantly recognizable. When Alex approached, he raised a brow in mild surprise. Little human, he said, his voice low and gravelly. What brings you here? Alex held up the emblem. I need to speak with your commander. The Marine's eyes narrowed. Why? Because this standoff is going to destroy everything if it keeps going. I want to stop it. The Marine stared at them for a moment, then let out a deep chuckle. You are bold, as always. Very well. Follow me. The Crider flagship was a fortress of dark metal and glowing amber light. As Alex stepped off the shuttle and onto its deck, they couldn't help but feel small amid the towering alien figures and vast halls. The Marine escorted them to a chamber near the heart of the ship, where the Crider commander awaited. Commander Varkan was as imposing as Alex had imagined. His scaled face was severe, his eyes sharp with suspicion as he regarded the human child before him. This is the one you spoke of? Varkan asked, glancing at the Marine. Yes, Commander, the Marine replied. They are unorthodox, but their words carry weight. Alex stepped forward, clutching the emblem tightly. Commander Varkan, I know I'm just a kid, and I know this isn't my place, but I need you to listen. Varkan's expression didn't change, but he gestured for Alex to continue. This standoff is going to destroy everything, Alex said. Earth, the outpost, maybe even your fleets. And for what? To prove who's stronger? To claim a piece of territory that doesn't even want to be part of your war? Varkan's gaze remained steady. The Tharn have violated our treaty. They seek to undermine our strength. If we show weakness, it will embolden them. And if you fight here, you'll destroy an entire planet of people who have nothing to do with your conflict. Alex countered. Is that strength? Or is it just cruelty? Varkan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Before the conversation could continue, the door hissed open, and a new figure entered. It was the Tharn emissary, their translucent skin shimmering faintly. This is highly irregular, the emissary said, their voice sharp. Why is a human child aboard this vessel? Because I invited them, Varkan said, his tone calm but firm. The emissary's gaze flicked to Alex. Speak, then. What could a child possibly have to say that would matter here? Alex took a deep breath. You're both here because you think fighting will make you stronger. But all it's going to do is hurt people who don't deserve it. You don't have to trust each other, but maybe you can trust me. I'm not asking you to agree on everything. I'm just asking you to stop this before it's too late. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Varkan spoke, his voice thoughtful. You speak with courage, little human. Perhaps there is wisdom in your words. The emissary's expression was unreadable, but they inclined their heads slightly. It is rare for one so young to speak so boldly. Perhaps we have underestimated humanity. The negotiations that followed were tense but productive. Both sides agreed to a temporary ceasefire and began drafting terms for a more permanent truce. Alex wasn't privy to the details, but they didn't need to be. What mattered was that the fleets were withdrawing, and Earth was no longer in immediate danger. When Alex returned to the diner, the atmosphere was different. The tension that had hung over the outpost for days was gone, replaced by a tentative sense of relief. Maria pulled Alex into a tight hug the moment they walked through the door. "You did it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't do it alone," Alex replied. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Alex sat outside the diner, staring up at the stars. The Crater and Tharn fleets were still visible, their distant forms moving slowly away from Earth. The Crater Marine's words echoed in Alex's mind: "Kindness is rare in the galaxy. Cherish it." Alex smiled, the emblem warm in their hand. Maybe kindness really could make a difference.